Please describe your job title and primary duties.
I worked at the cutting counter at Joann Fabrics, which is obviously a giant counter, and it's where you cut fabric for customers. We didn't stay behind it though. We often would help customers pick out fabric, locate fabric in the store, and help them, learn about the fabric and okay, what will this fabric do if I sew it this way? What will this fabric do if I wash it? That kind of thing. Customers would bring us up their orders, and we were in charge of rolling it out on the bolt and cutting it wherever they'd say, okay, we need 2 yards. So it was your job to measure out the 2 yards and cut it for them. If they needed more than that, it was also your job to use a little handheld device to scan the item and figure out where it could be located in a different store. I also worked a little bit as a CSR there, which is basically just checking out tickets for customers. And when you're a cutting counter representative, you don't handle money at all. It's all just basically cutting and helping with advice on projects. And then with CSR, it was just checking out, the prices for that.
What was your favorite part about working there?
I really loved the employee discount because I am a big crafter, so it was great to get, I think it's 15% off on your entire purchase. And I just loved, again, the atmosphere and being around fabrics and crafty stuff because that's like my forte. So it was great to be in an environment where that was like what I was surrounded by and by so many very nice people who were very like loving and helpful. And, if you made a mistake, they weren't like, oh my gosh, like this is the end of the world. They're like, that's okay. It's, just do better next time. And I really liked that there.
Please describe a typical day as an employee.
Okay, well, once you would check in, you'd wear an apron, so you'd like put on your apron and you'd find your scissors and you'd sign into a portable device. And then you take your spot behind the cutting counter and basically you would just wait for a customer to come up. We do like a number system and you make small talk with them and you ask them, what project are you doing? How long have you been sewing for? And, you cut their fabric as however they need it. And then once you're finished cutting it, you take a little handheld device and you scan on each bolt. There's a little barcode, and so you scan it and you print out a ticket for them. They actually don't pay there. So you just print out the ticket and give it to them and then, go on to the next customer. And if anybody needed help, you could leave the cutting counter to, help pick out a fabric. People are always asking your opinion, like, oh, do you like the silk or the satin better? And so you get to give your opinion sometimes. Or someone would be like, one instance I remember was someone was like, I need fabric that has countries printed on it. And I knew that there was, a cotton fabric I had seen before. And I was like, I'll find it for you. And I spent like 10 minutes, but I eventually found the fabric. So that was like a typical day, maybe not that specific, but there were always instances where you were giving opinions or helping somebody locate something particular.
How would you describe the application and interview process?
You were given like a 2 or 3 page paper that you take home and you fill it out. And then I actually called. That's something that I've gotten a lot of my interviews by, is calling and saying, I just turned in my application. When can I get an interview? Because they actually didn't call me. I called them. And so I called them and they said, well, our manager is doing interviews tonight. If you can make it, this is the last night she's doing interviewed. And so, I dressed nicely and I went to the interview and they sat you down and they usually ask about like your crafting experience because it is a crafting environment and you give opinions. So that's important to them. One thing I recommend, I wore a skirt that I had made. So if you're a crafty person, bring something that you've made or maybe that you've done changes to, because then they can see like with proof that you are a crafty person and that you would suit really well in that atmosphere. And they just ask questions about craft experience, work experience, whether you were like a strong leader or maybe if you liked working in a group, or if you liked being, responsible for things, like if you liked to manage your tasks, like organizing and stuff like that. And then once they figure that out, they would decide, okay, we want you to be a cutting counter representative, or maybe we want you to be a CSR, or maybe we want you as a shift leader, which is just someone who kind of like walks around the store and puts things away and straightens everything up. And so I was placed as a cutting counter representative.
What questions did the interviewer ask during the job interview?
They asked me how long have you been crafting? They asked if you're willing to give opinions to people about their projects. They also asked if you're willing to give advice, like, oh, this silk would be better for this project, or maybe you need some cotton for this project. They also asked, the basic questions about responsibility, will you show up on time? They asked about your leadership abilities, which I think I already said. Sorry. And whether if you saw somebody else doing something wrong, were you gonna correct them or were you gonna just let it happen? So they always want to know, because there's so much error that could be made when you're cutting fabric, that they want to know that you're someone who can nicely say, maybe you should have done that better, and they'll ask if you would be willing to train other people, like once you've taken the job. And so they look for that as well, and that's always a good thing to show that you can like teach somebody else the skills that you take up there.
What other advice would you give to a job seeker looking to get employment?
I would advise them to definitely show experience with craftiness, even if it was just something small, like, oh, I helped camp students with building a basket. That is a huge thing for them because it's a craft atmosphere. It's people who want advice on things. So that's a really great benefit. Another piece of advice I would give would be to dress nicely when you go. Even though that they have a strict uniform policy, they like to see that you're someone who takes that extra 10 minutes out of your day to put on something a little bit nicer than normal clothes. That I think that most interviewees or interviewers would appreciate that. And I would also advise them to just bring a lot of energy and enthusiasm to it because they do appreciate someone who loves what they do. Even if it's something that you don't have experience with, if you can show that you are excited about working there, that can definitely put you above the rest.